Hello, YouTube. I hope you're doing well. Today we're on code.org, Unit 5, Lesson 11, Part 1. It tells us this program traverses two parallel lists to print the price of each piece of fruit. There are two other parallel lists of students and what grade they're in. It tells us first to read the code and run it to see how it works. It then tells us to add code to the program to print the name and grade of the 5 students. And then it gives us an example of how it should look below. Let's go ahead and run the code just to see what happens. Here in our console log, we can see that it prints out the fruits and the prices within this for loop, and it pulls all of this information, puts it in the variable, and then prints it out. We're going to use this to mimic what we're going to do for the students. So let's go ahead and collapse the instructions just so that we can see more of the screen. We can see that we already have our list. So the first thing that we're going to do is create our 2 variables so that we can use that to print the names. Go to variables, and we'll click and drag this down below. The first one we'll call student, and the next one we'll call grade. Now that we've done that, we need to go ahead and create a for loop. So we'll go to the control, we'll go ahead and click and drag this for loop below, and I'm going to add some space just so I can see my code just a little bit better. So let's look at this for loop. For this, we're creating the variable I. That honestly could be a little bit confusing because we've already used that above. You may or may not want to change this variable from I to another letter, but this will run without it, and by default it's going to assign I, so we'll keep it. The I here is set at 0. It's going to look at I and see, is that less than 4? That's not actually what we want for this list. We actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names. We could put that number here, but really best practice is to do what they did above, which is to look at the list and get the length. When I click out of that, it updates. So what it'll do is it'll look at this variable I, compare it to the length. Is it less than the length of the list? It'll run through the for loop and add 1 at the end. For this, what we want to do is update the variables that we created. So let's go back to the variables section of the toolbox, and we're going to go ahead and drag in 2 assigned variables. The first one we're going to do is student, and we're going to look to the students list. We're going to do an open bracket. We'll do I and then do the close bracket. And then we're going to do the same thing for grade. Now that we've assigned those variables within the indexed list, what we need to do is print that to the console log. So we'll go ahead and drag that over. We need to go to the math portion of the toolbox because we're going to use the add operator to concatenate our variables and a string of text together. I'm going to go ahead and drop this back down so that we can see our example here. What we want is for our student name, so student, then we need to add a string of text. We're going to do an open quotation mark. We need to add a space here. If we don't, when we run this, it's going to join our variable with the text. We're going to add another space at the end of our string and then close it out with the ending quotation mark. And then in our empty space, we're going to add the grade. I'll go ahead and clear the console log, and then let's rerun the code. All right, we see that the fruit list ran, and then it went to our student list. And within the list, we can see that we added all of the correct spacing and everything. Once you're done, make sure you click finish.